Just a forewarning, this video is going to be a bit faster paced than my other videos, so if you're ever confused at a certain point, you can just feel free to go back and rewatch what I've already said. Hello everybody. In this video, I'm going to be doing something that I haven't done yet on this channel, and that's make a response video. Earlier this year, the YouTuber by the name CosmicSkeptic made a video critiquing the Kalam Cosmological Argument and trying to show that it's unsound. And in this video, I'll be critiquing his critique. But before I get into his video, I just want to say two things. First of all, most of his objections in his video are things that I've already responded to in other videos. So if you're wondering why I'm even bothering to make a video if they're all the same points that I made before, it's because this is a place where I can show my responses in an active setting. That is, there's an actual situation to which my responses are directed. This is essentially applied responses. Second of all, I want to say that I'm not responding to CosmicSkeptic because I don't like him or I don't like his channel or whatnot. In fact, I actually like his videos a lot. I'm subscribed to him even. I think he makes good videos, and if you're interested in this kind of stuff, atheism versus theism, Christianity, religion, whatever, you should definitely go check him out. He brings up points that honestly need responding to. You can't just stick your head in the sand and act like they don't exist. So I'm not responding to him out of some dislike for his channel. I'm responding to him because he makes points that I think are false. And I know every single channel that deals with religion or politics or whatnot says, I'm only interested in the truth. And in a lot of times that's obviously not the case, but for the love of God, I am literally just interested in the truth. Like, if these arguments are bad arguments, I want to know that they're bad arguments. But if objections are raised to these arguments that I don't think are good objections, I'm going to respond to those objections. Now, just as a forewarning, if I ever sound like I have an attacking tone of voice or whatnot, don't take that as me like attacking CosmicSkeptic. I just happen to be really passionate about these issues. So with that said, let's get into the video. In the first couple minutes, CosmicSkeptic gives a brief history of cosmological arguments and introduces the classical arguments made by Thomas Aquinas. I'm not too concerned with these arguments, so I'm just going to let his points stand, but here is where he starts talking about the Kalam argument.
Hang on a second. God surely is also a thing. So if everything has a cause, then what caused God? Well, this is where the Kalam Cosmological Argument comes in. It makes one small adjustment to the original premises. Instead of saying that everything has a cause, it says that everything that begins to exist has a cause. And God has always existed, he never began, and therefore is exempt from this infinite regress. And hey presto, problem solved, right? Well, no, and let me tell you why. Firstly, you may have noticed that I referred to this first mover just then as God, as he. But there's a world of difference between proving the existence of some kind of arbitrary first mover and proving the existence of a god, and especially your particular god. Even if the Kalam Cosmological Argument was sound, which I hope to prove to you that it's not, it still wouldn't prove any particular god.
He's absolutely right. The Kalam argument by itself doesn't show any particular god to exist. It doesn't even show that a god exists, where we're thinking of God in terms of a being that's all-powerful, all-knowing, morally perfect, etc. It's only intended to show that there's a cause to the universe, and as such, it must have certain properties like being spaceless, timeless, immaterial, and capable of causing a universe. In a previous video, I showed some arguments for the personhood of the cause of the universe. And even though I'm not totally certain that they're sound arguments, nevertheless, they at least give you something to think about. But even assuming the argument can't prove the cause to be personal, this argument is still extremely theologically significant. If we grant that the argument is sound, then no one can say, the universe is just eternal. No, the argument shows that the universe began to exist and that it has a cause. So the next question must be, well, what caused it? In fact, what even could cause it? Perhaps someone could appeal to the multiverse and say that our local universe was caused to exist by some outside universe. But the word universe in the Kalam just means all of space-time reality. This includes any kind of multiverse or other universe you want to imagine. But even assuming that the word universe in the Kalam only refers to our local universe, that still raises the question of where this other outside universe came from. That universe couldn't itself have been eternal for the same reasons laid out in the Kalam. The Kalam, if sound, shows that the number of past events cannot be infinite. So if this universe, this outside universe, had any kind of temporal reality to it, that could not itself be infinite in the past, and it would have to have a beginning. If you want to put forward that something outside of time, or timeless, is the cause of the universe, then you're stuck with the problem I laid out in my last video, namely, what such things can exist. And when you come up with your list of possibilities, you can't forget to factor in that this is a timeless being bringing rise to a temporal effect. But if this being is impersonal, then why is the effect not also timeless along with it? Why did a timeless thing give rise to something in time? So all in all, this argument is very theologically significant, especially if the arguments for the personhood of the cause are sound. But even still, its proper use is in conjunction with other arguments. Typically, theists won't just present the Kalam and say, there we go, Christianity is proven. Typically, theists will try and make a cumulative case using multiple arguments that each show different aspects of this cause. So to fault the Kalam argument because it alone can't prove every single attribute of God seems unfair. It was never intended to in the first place. I will add here that if someone does say from this one argument, therefore Christianity is true, or therefore Islam is true, or whatnot, I will 100% stand behind you and say, no, it doesn't.
Now, Frank Turek, who we've encountered before on this channel, has had this contention put to him on more than one occasion, and he attempts to get around it by claiming that whatever it was that caused the universe had to be some kind of personal being, because it had to make a choice in creating the universe. Here's a clip from one of his videos called From the Kalam to the Biblical God.
And then also personal. Why does the being need to be personal? Because in order to make a choice, which is what you have to do in order to go from a state of nothingness to a state of creation, you have to be a person.
But Turek and others like him fail to consider the fact that consciousness is not always needed as a driving force behind something happening. I mean, does a leaf choose to fall off of a tree?
I'm not gonna lie, this is the exact quote from Frank Turek that I referenced in my video on arguments for the personhood of the cause. In fact, CosmicSkeptic's video responding to it is literally the first place I ever saw it, and I've given my thoughts on that argument. Also, I didn't remember that the title of his video was From the Kalam to the Biblical God. So, like I said just now, I will stand behind you and say 100% that it does not prove the biblical God. I don't like Frank Turek's title for his video. I do, however, think that you aren't quite understanding Turek's claim here. You say consciousness is not always needed as a driving force behind something happening. Does a leaf choose to fall off a tree? But Turek isn't saying that absolutely everything that happens somehow stems back to some conscious cause or whatnot. Rather, he's only concerned with something coming into being from no pre-existing stuff. The leaf falling on the ground is perfectly explainable without reference to any kind of mind. The tree exists off of which the leaf is hanging, the leaf has mass, gravity is acting on that mass, and it has air to fall through. But nowhere here is there a creation out of nothing, or something happening, new material coming into existence where there was no material before. Second of all, the argument is concerned with things beginning to exist, where a thing can be thought of as some kind of substance that bears properties. So a leaf falling is not a thing in this sense. Granted, a leaf is a thing, but falling is not a thing in this way. Falling is just a description of some event that's happening.
But even if you could prove that there was some kind of consciousness behind the universe, Turek still makes no link as to why this would need to be a personal god. I mean, who's to say this god would still be around? Who's to say that it cares about humans or intervenes in worldly affairs? And for that matter, who's to say that it would be one god? Why not some kind of polytheistic council? And who's to say that it's not some kind of evil god with evil intentions? The list is unending. This argument offers absolutely no specificities on the nature of this prime mover. And look, this whole argument exists for the sake of it being impossible for there to be an infinite regress of causation. But is that really an impossibility? I mean, to be sure, our observable universe did have a beginning. The Big Bang did happen. I mean, you can actually see it with the right kind of telescope. In fact, if you want to see a video on some proofs for the Big Bang, do let me know in the comments. It's been something that I've been considering doing for a while, so if you want to see that, do let me know. Now, theists often point to the Big Bang and say, well look, here's the beginning of everything in existence. There must have been some kind of cause behind it. But hold on, because the Big Bang has never claimed to be the beginning of everything. Rather, it's only ever claimed to be the beginning of everything that we know of. Perhaps there were universes before ours. Perhaps the death of one universe is the Big Bang of the next, and this could be some kind of infinite chain. Perhaps there's a multiverse, and not even a multiverse of separate entities, but maybe one large, infinitely large fabric in which there are sort of localized areas of activity, one of which is our observable universe, which did have its own beginning. There's simply no way for us to know.
I've already responded to most of this, so I'll just go over the couple of new things he said here. First off, Occam's razor, the idea that we shouldn't multiply causes beyond necessity, will shave off any multitude of causes for the universe. If one can get the job done, then why invoke multiple? Second, the evil god is consistent with this argument. This argument says nothing about the morality of the cause. Again, you're faulting the argument for not proving something it wasn't ever intended to prove. Appealing solely to scientific arguments for why the past is finite, like the Big Bang, misses the broader philosophical arguments for why the past must be finite. I'm not going to go over these arguments here because that would take forever, but I did briefly lay out one of the arguments in my overview video of the Kalam. These philosophical arguments show that it doesn't matter whether this universe is the only universe or whether there's a multiverse. In any situation, the past cannot be infinite.
Aquinas, Craig, and Turek alike assume some kind of singular grand beginning to not only our universe, but anything that does, will, and can exist. And there's simply no proof to back this up.
Because he ignores the philosophical arguments for the finitude of the past, it seems to him like Craig and Turek are just assuming some singular grand beginning to the universe. But the philosophical arguments are what show that there has to actually be some beginning point before which there was no time of any kind whatsoever. It is a singular beginning point. The philosophical arguments are the proof for this singular beginning.
There's a lot that we don't know about the laws of physics. There's probably a lot that we can't know about the laws of physics. I mean, let's not forget that we are constrained to one single universe. There's no way for us to compare it with any others. We can test things within the universe because we can make control variables when we have more than one example of the thing that we're trying to test. But we shouldn't be so naive to assume that everything that applies to things within the universe also applies to the universe itself. To do so is to commit the fallacy of composition, and this is one of Bertrand Russell's prime objections to the Kalam Cosmological Argument. Here's an example of the logic. No atoms are alive, therefore nothing made of atoms is alive. You can see the problem here.
Again, appealing to the laws of physics and the scientific aspect of this just misses the broader philosophical arguments for the finitude of the past. The fact that there's no other universe to compare ours with is irrelevant because this argument is not arguing inductively by looking at all the other universes and saying, oh, they all have causes, so probably ours has a cause also. Rather, the argument is a deductive argument, which starts with the premise that something can't come from nothing. That is, anything that does come into existence comes into existence owing to something. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe's existence, it coming into being, owes itself to something. Again, I've dealt with the accusation that the Kalam commits the fallacy of composition. No one is arguing that because every part of the universe has a cause, therefore the universe as a whole must have a cause.
But it's important to recognize here that we're not saying that there was definitely no cause behind the universe, or if there was, that it definitely wasn't a god. Okay, it's the theist that's making an active claim, and we're simply trying to rebut it. This series, this Arguments for God series, is a series of rebuttals, not a series of arguments, okay? Because the burden of proof does not lie with the atheist.
The burden of proof lies on the person making the claim. If I claim that the universe has a cause, I have the burden of proof. However, it's not true that the atheist never has the burden of proof. For example, if an atheist says that evil is incompatible with a loving God, it's not immediately up to the theist to show that they are compatible. The atheist is the one making the claim. They have to first show some incompatibility between evil and God, and then it will be the theist's job to respond to that. So both the atheist and the theist can have the burden of proof. It just depends on who's making the claim. Now, I suspect that CosmicSkeptic is already aware of this, and I'm not really directing this response at him. It's just I hear this all the time, that atheists never ever have the burden of proof, and it's just not true.
But with that out of the way, let's conclude with a summary of the Kalam Cosmological Argument. So here goes. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. I believe that there was a beginning, not only to everything within the observable universe, but to that universe itself and everything that does, can, and will ever exist. Therefore, there must have been some kind of prime mover, and that prime mover was obviously the god of the religion in which I happen to have been brought up. Checkmate, atheists.
Checkmate indeed. So, that is all for this video. Again, I don't want you to get the impression that I have been attacking CosmicSkeptic or whatnot. Like I said, I like his videos, and if you're interested in the subject, you should definitely check out his channel. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, then without a doubt, share it with someone you know, and subscribe to keep up with my newest videos. If you feel like I made an error in my reasoning, or you just have something to say, then leave it in the comments. I love getting comments. I actually don't know what I'm going over for my next video on arguments for and against the existence of God. But I will soon enough, so stay tuned for that video, and I'll see you then.